All right. That was a very interesting panel, that last panel. Scott Schwartz, being the dedicated individual that he is, felt like he wanted me to emphasize one final point that he wanted to make, and that was when you heard what Gus had to say, and then you heard from Mr. Rossetti from the manufacturing end of it, it just underscored the need for more of a performance-based standard approach versus something that was procedural or prescriptive. In other words, that each battery shipment is unique in its own requirements, and he just wanted me to point that out to you, and I think it's true. So, anyway, good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Captain Joe DePete, ALPA's first Vice President, and I'm the National Safety Coordinator. I hope that you're enjoying your lunch. Please continue to do so. And it's my special privilege to introduce someone who truly needs no introduction here in Washington, D.C. FAA Administrator Michael Huerta is well known and respected as the head of that agency. We're very fortunate to have him with us this afternoon to share his thoughts about all cargo safety today and the future of improving safety for this vital segment of the transportation industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Administrator Michael Huerta.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and Joe, thank you very much for that introduction. It's always a real pleasure to attend forums such as this, and I'd like to thank ALPA for hosting a symposium on a topic that is as important as this one is. We all know that aviation represents a very, very significant contributor to the U.S. economy, some 12 to 13 million American jobs, $1.5 trillion of economic activity. And freight movement is an extremely important part of that. It's essential to the health of the American economy, and aviation really plays an essential role when it comes to the movement of freight. U.S. airlines moved more than 23 million tons of freight around the world last year. So today's conference is tackling a number of pressing issues for the air cargo industry, from mitigating operational risks and human performance factors to assessing infrastructure needs and safely transporting hazardous materials. These, of course, are issues that we at the FAA obviously spend a lot of time thinking about, and I'd like to update you on some of the work that we're doing, and then I'll be happy to answer a few questions. First, I'd like to provide a brief update on some topics that are very much at the forefront of our thinking at the FAA, and one, of course, is a brief update on what's going on with respect to Next Gen. As you well know, Next Gen is using innovative technologies and procedures to make flying safer, to make it greener, and to make it much more efficient. And the air cargo industry has always been an important partner to the FAA as we have introduced next-gen capabilities, which makes sense. In businesses such as yours, minutes count when customers are relying on your service. We've made a lot of progress in building the infrastructure that supports next-gen just over the last year, and we're delivering measurable benefits to consumers and aviation stakeholders all across the country. We completed the modernization of our en route automation platform. The en route automation modernization, or ERAM platform, is now installed and operational at all 20 of our planned en route control centers. This is important because this is a foundational technology that replaces a legacy system that's been around since the 1960s, and it gives us a much bigger and richer picture of our nation's air traffic, and allows controllers to do a better job of managing flights from gate to gate. It's also extremely reliable. It's been available more than 99.99% of the time since we completed the nationwide installation. Now, the benefits of this can't be understated, particularly since it enables a variety of other critical next-gen systems. It links seamlessly with automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, or ADS-B, technologies to provide a more accurate picture of satellite-based aircraft positions. And last year, as you know, we finished the coast-to-coast installation of ADS-B, and it's now integrated into all of our en route centers. Now, we all know that the full benefits of ADS-B are going to require 100% equipage for aircraft flying in the designated airspace, and we are very committed to working with our stakeholders to ensure that all aircraft are equipped with ADS-B out by January 1st, 2020. Since our call to action last year, the number of equipped aircraft has more than doubled, and thanks to falling equipment costs, we expect to see equipage rates continue to rise. Datacom is another technology we're using to modernize our airspace and make every phase of flight more efficient. It gives air traffic controllers and pilots the ability to transmit flight plans and other essential messages more efficiently than with today's voice communication capabilities. And the switch from voice to text increases safety by reducing the chance of a readback error while relaying information. It also allows controllers to send instructions to several aircraft at once, which is a much more accurate and efficient process than having a number of serial conversations. It's not hard to see the benefits of this technology. In fact, in many respects, it sells itself. Carriers stay on schedule, planes get into the air and to their destinations much more quickly, and packages get delivered on time. This September, we started using Datacom at 3 key site towers, Salt Lake City and the major airports located in Houston. And these are in addition to the highly successful trials that we rolled out in Newark and in Memphis. These trials wouldn't have been possible without our partners in the cargo industry, and I'd really like to give a shout out to UPS and to FedEx. We were grateful for their support because we learned a lot in how we could use the pre-departure clearance capabilities of Datacom to save a lot of time and to ensure that the system was doing what it was designed to do. As a result of those trials, in 2016, we're aiming to build on this momentum with an accelerated schedule that's going to deliver Datacom services to more than 50 additional air traffic control towers. Now, this is just one more example of the FAA's larger shift toward reducing risk in our national aviation system. Aviation has long been at the forefront of this kind of thinking in transportation, how we use data to identify risk and how we use that data to illuminate how we best mitigate it. And it's unquestionably the future of our industry. The FAA is embedding risk-based decision-making into every level of our business. When I became administrator, I made this one of our very top priorities. Risk management is critical to our mission of providing the safest and the most efficient aerospace system in the world. We all know that 20 years ago, we in the industry operated under the philosophy that 100% compliance with safety regulation equaled 100% safety. What we all realized, however, was that this didn't go far enough. Not all safety issues are regulated, and several incidents in the mid-1990s led us as an industry to rethink this approach. We knew that as aviation became safer, we'd have less accident data to guide our efforts, and we needed to focus in a forward-thinking way on identifying areas of risk and mitigating them before there could be an accident or an incident. Thanks to our collaboration with airlines, manufacturers, labor, and others under the Commercial Aviation Safety Team, we reduced the risk of fatal commercial accidents by 83% between 1998 and 2008, a stunning success, and since then, we have continued to build on that accomplishment. Now, an important factor contributing to that is the widespread adoption of safety management systems. The FAA finalized a rule this year requiring most commercial carriers to have safety management systems in place by 2018. What this does is it codifies the risk-based decision-making process that we've developed cooperatively with industry over the last decade and a half, and it also puts us in line with internationally recognized best practices to ensure the highest levels of safety. Additionally, this rule strengthens the safety partnership between the industry and the FAA. and we wanted to formalize what many carriers are already doing on a voluntary basis and bring those who aren't already involved on board. Now, when I talk about this evolution in using safety management systems, I want to emphasize that this isn't about the FAA stepping back from its regulatory role. It's about creating a stronger, voluntary safety culture across the industry that's going to help get us collectively to the next level of safety. And this is particularly important for cargo carriers, which have to contend with unique risks that aren't as prevalent in passenger operations. Cargo operators are often flying at night and may be transporting hazardous materials. These types of operations require greater risk mitigations that sometimes go above and beyond what may be required in regulation. For example, ALPA has joined the FAA in encouraging cargo operators to voluntarily adopt our Part 117 regulations for flight and duty rules, and we hope to see carriers voluntarily put these standards in place to ensure pilots are well rested for flight. Partnership between government and industry is also important as we look to tackle emerging safety risks, like the transportation of lithium batteries. And it was interesting, I heard the tail end of this panel that immediately preceded lunch. We know what an incredibly complicated issue this is. Battery manufacturers around the world have products that they need to get to market, and it's our job to work together to find ways to make sure that that happens safely. Our actions need to be grounded in data, and our tech center, under Gus's leadership, has done extensive research and testing that's demonstrated the dangers that are associated with transporting lithium batteries. Based on these findings, we recently recommended that ICAO adopt international standards that would ban shipment of lithium-ion batteries as cargo on passenger airliners until safe transport conditions could be developed and implemented. Now, while we were unable to come to an agreement on the ban in this round of talks, I think we all need to continue to look for ways to mitigate the risks of battery fires in both passenger and cargo operations. The ICAO Dangerous Goods Panel was able to reach consensus on implementing several key measures that will improve safety, including shipping batteries with a reduced state of charge. We're very committed to working with our global partners to set transport standards that could reduce the risk of fires, such as improving packaging standards for air transportation. And we also support better hazard communication so that pilots know what they're carrying on board and can make better decisions in case of an incident. As part of this overall shift to risk-based decision-making, our approach to compliance is evolving as well. I recently announced the FAA's new compliance philosophy, which cements much of what the agency has been doing for quite some time. The goal is to find problems before they can result in an incident, to use the most appropriate tools to fix those problems, and to continue to monitor a situation to ensure that they stay fixed. Now, this approach is based on something very important: an open and transparent exchange of information and data between the FAA and the industry we regulate. We want to have safe operators, not operators who make an inadvertent mistake and choose to hide it because they're afraid of some retaliation. If there is a failing, whether it's human or mechanical, we want to know about it. We as an industry need to learn from it, and we need to make the changes necessary to prevent it from happening again. Now, this, of course, doesn't mean we're going to go easy on compliance with important safety standards, or that we're going to ignore minor issues, or let anyone believe that they have a free pass. We'll have to continue to have zero tolerance for intentionally reckless behavior, for repeat failures, or deviation from regulatory standards. And we'll vigorously pursue enforcement action in those circumstances and others as required by law. But in cases where we find flawed procedures, simple mistakes, a lack of understanding, or diminished skills, we need to focus on using tools like training or documented improvements to procedures in order to ensure what we all want, which is compliance with safety standards. There's an important difference between accountability, which accepts responsibility and looks forward, and blame, which focuses on punishment for what's already happened. And the compliance philosophy is all about how do we strengthen accountability. It recognizes that all aviation stakeholders have a vested interest in the safety of our system. I'd like to take a moment also to update you briefly on the actions the FAA is taking in one of the fastest changing areas of the aviation industry, and that is, of course, unmanned aircraft, which some have speculated might also dramatically change what the air cargo industry might look like in years ahead. We all know that the popularity of unmanned aircraft has increased dramatically in recent years, and with this popularity has come, for all of us, growing concerns about the safe operations of these aircraft in our nation's airspace. In recent months, we've seen an increase in reports of unmanned aircraft coming too close to manned aircraft and airports. We've all read the stories about how they interfered with wildfire fighting in California and the one that crashed into Arthur Ashe Stadium during the U.S. Open tennis match. And these incidents make it clear we must work harder to ensure a strong culture of safety and responsibility. There's no single solution on how we do this. The integration of unmanned aircraft is multifaceted, and our approach needs to be as nimble as the technology is itself. One tool that you've heard a lot about in the last few weeks is registration. Secretary Fox and I recently announced that the FAA is going to require operators to register their unmanned aircraft, and the details are being worked out as we speak by a task force of government and industry stakeholders who will deliver their recommendations to us by November 20th. Now, registration provides us an important opportunity to educate operators about airspace rules so that they can use their unmanned aircraft and use it safely. But it also helps us to more easily identify and to take enforcement actions against people who don't obey the rules or who choose not to operate safely. It's an important step forward, but we recognize it's not the whole solution. Education also plays an extremely important role. The FAA, with our government and industry partners, continue to conduct outreach through a campaign that we call Know Before You Fly and another called No Drone Zones, making users aware of where they can and cannot fly. And for those who don't follow the rules, we need to continue our enforcement efforts. Last month, we proposed a $1.9 million civil penalty against a company that knowingly conducted dozens of unauthorized flights over Chicago and New York, despite being repeatedly warned that that was not permitted. This sends a clear message to others that might pose a safety risk. Operate within the law, or we will take action. As registration, education, and enforcement focus on enhancing safety around commercial and recreational use of unmanned aircraft, we're also working to put in place a regulatory framework that keeps pace with the commercial uses. In February of this year, we proposed a rule that would allow small unmanned aircraft operations that we know to be safe, and we plan to finalize it by next spring. While that work, however, is ongoing, we're using our existing authority to accommodate requests for commercial operations, and to date, we've approved more than 2,200 exemptions that allow unmanned aircraft to be used for a wide variety of different purposes, from inspecting aging infrastructure to monitoring crops and wildfires. Finally, I want to address a topic that's on everyone's mind, and that's reauthorization of the FAA. As you know, Congress passed a 6-month extension of the FAA's authority just last month that buys us some time to enact a longer-term bill. And discussions are likely to continue about the structure of the FAA and, in particular, our air traffic operations. We've said that we're open to having those conversations, but we must ensure that any potential changes provide long-term, stable funding for our air traffic operations and help us to maintain the safest airspace system in the world. And I'd particularly like to thank the work of the FAA's Management Advisory Council, which have, I think, done an excellent job of framing the challenges that we're dealing with as an agency and as an industry in the years ahead. I'm hopeful that we will avoid returning to the days before our 2012 reauthorization, when we had 23 short-term extensions. What we need is a longer-term bill that provides us stable and reliable funding and authority for the critical projects that we are supporting and to help us maintain America's role as a global aviation leader. We're going to continue to push for a long-term reauthorization bill, and I hope that you will join us. Before I conclude, let me leave you with this. Today's symposium is covering a lot of different topics, but one idea is at the heart of everything that you are talking about, and that is, how do we ensure the highest levels of safety? I believe that there's never going to be a day when our aviation system is safe enough. There's always more that we're going to be able to do. And in fact, the Commercial Aviation Safety Team has set another ambitious goal to further reduce the risk of fatal accidents by an additional 50% by 2025. Now, if we're going to accomplish this goal, government and industry must continue to work together. And that's the value of meetings such as this one. It gives us the opportunity to come together, to have spirited debates, but at the end of the day, we can find new and better ways to support the safest aviation system in the world. So I thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Well, thank you, Administrator Huerta.
Thank you.
For the taking the time out of our
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good to see you.